This video was brought to you in part by the supporters of the AMTV Patreon. Thank you. Hello there folks, it's Adam Martyn here, and well, it's finally time, isn't it? After 10 months of waiting, Revolution of the Daleks has just gone to air. I'm recording this literally just after the episode's finished, it's just after 8 o'clock, and we've got a lot to talk about. I assume you guys will know this from the off, but obviously major spoilers for the episode. I'm going to be talking fairly in detail about it. These are initial thoughts, initial reactions. I have just watched it. I might go back and do a later video when there's been a bit more time, but I wanted to give you my initial thoughts. I've jotted down a lot of notes on my phone. I've probably not covered everything that happened in the episode because we'd literally be here forever, but I want to cover all the major points. So rest assured, if you're watching this for some reason and you haven't seen Revolution of the Daleks yet, please click away now. But getting right off into it, the pre-credits I thought was really great. It didn't really feature the Doctor or her companions. It was more about what happened to the Recon Dalek from Resolution and how, well, just where it ended up, basically. I love mainly the performances. The performances in this scene were fantastic. They were sort of very naturalistic, very underplayed, which actually worked to its effect. I think a big criticism Doctor Who has at it sometimes, even in the modern era, is that the acting is a bit too OTT, a bit over the top, but I found these performances from these characters really, really realistic and relatable. In terms of the title sequence, nice to see it again. It seems a bit brighter this year. I don't know if that's just me. I know they're transmitting it, or they're doing like a 4K version. I don't know if it's something to do with the 4K process, but I just like the little tweaks to it, to be honest. Then, of course, we have to talk about the intro of the Daleks in this, or the new Daleks, or the security drones as they were labelled, and they were pretty badass. I mean, the music from Segun Akinola really made them look like a threat. Their intro coming through the smoke, and I've always found there's a great power in Daleks when you don't necessarily have to have them screaming and shouting all of the time. There's just as much power in a Dalek swiveling its eye stalk or just moving without speaking that makes it really terrifying, so it was a great introduction to them. Speaking of characters that aren't the main four, Jo and Jack, the Prime Minister, and Jack Robertson returning, I thought they were fabulous. Their chemistry in particular, the few scenes that they had, you know, sort of as this Prime Minister in waiting and this corrupt American Donald Trump-esque businessman. Again, they played it really well. The lines were really well written as well. Lots of jokes or in-jokes about how companies, you know, don't pay tax or the British political system. But both actors gave wonderful performances. In fact, all of the actors, I'll just say, gave this a wonderful performance. There were very few scenes or characters that I thought were either underdeveloped here or not played to a high enough standard. It was fantastic. And then what I've listed on my phone as the monster roll call. So obviously we're cut to the Doctor in prison, and there's that scene where she walks through and she sees some different monsters. We see a weeping angel, we see an ood, a sycorax, we see a pating, we see the silence, and I love the little silence joke. Oh, I didn't know you were here, or whatever she said. It was a really, really cool reference to these past characters, enough that obviously people who've watched for long enough will go, ah, that's what they are. But then if you're new to the show, if you've only watched Jodie's era, for the monsters that are a bit older, you'll just see them as kooky old monsters. Also, just regarding the prison, they never explicitly called it Sharda, but I know that was a fan theory. Sharda was an old story from the late 70s that never got made, but it was a space prison. And a lot of people speculated that this prison could be Sharda. It wasn't specifically stated, and it wasn't specifically stated what the prison was called either, so we can just call it Sharda, can't we? Yaz's desperation is my next note. This is relating to the first scene when you see the three companions together in the spare TARDIS. I love how Mandip Gill plays her initial appearance in this episode, how she's just really desperate to find the Doctor, chasing up all the leads, because it's very clear that she misses her. And I know a lot of people also are wanting what they call a Thasmin relationship, so 13 and Yasmin, and I'm all for it as long as it's earned and it feels developed. And again, spoilers obviously, they didn't specifically go there, this story, there was no indication of that. There were little lines in there that implied that maybe Yaz's affections for the Doctor were more than just a simple friend, but I think they were counterweighed as well by other things said in the episode, which I'll get onto later. But basically that first scene of the companions in the spare TARDIS, absolutely cracking stuff, the three regulars giving it their all. And the last time for two of them as well. So the confrontation with Jack is my next note, and I mean Jack Robertson when the companions confront him. I get why they do that, you know, re-establish that they're back in his life, but the whole scene I thought was just, the way it was written, it felt very cliche in a way that, yeah, we know what you're doing here. Daleks, they're evil. No disrespect to the actors, I just think that there's better ways to reintroduce characters to each other or interrogate people without necessarily doing we know what you're doing. It's a bit tried and tested at this point. It would have been cool to see something new. But Captain Jack Harkness's intro, was great. I mean, we all didn't really know how he was going to appear in this episode, like how long it would be for, but it was nice to see he took front and center as part of the team again. And yeah, him busting the Doctor out of prison is such a Jack thing to do. And you instantly establish the history and weight of this character. When he hugs the Doctor and saying, "I missed you very much," you believe it, because these two obviously have had a history together, 15 years worth of New Who adventures almost. So it's nice to see that brought through. The TARDIS scene with Jodie and Jack Harkness was great as well, when they're back in the Doctor's TARDIS, sort of the Doctor bringing Jack up onto speed and Jack also doing the same. It's just, those two actors, Jodie Whittaker and John Barrowman, did a really great job of cementing their characters. They both know these characters well, they know who they are, they know their relationship, they know the stakes, but it's also getting the audience up to speed on where mainly the Doctor's at. What I will say though, a negative point I had, is there's too much lens flare. I know since Jodie took over, they've been filming in a new way and it looks stunning most of the time. The vistas, the landscapes, the visuals are all fantastic, but the lens flares, we're not J.J. Abrams. Like, it was mainly when the TARDIS arrived back on Earth and the three companions are at the table, and just on the shot of each of them, the lens flare, it's just too much. You don't need to use a lens flare to achieve any greater effect than what you're filming. The effect of the TARDIS coming back to these guys after 10 months should be enough. Nice little Series 1 callback as well, when Jack takes a moment to say, "Oh yeah, well I got killed by a Dalek, but I come back to life because I'm immortal." Partly her fault, but also partly one of her friends called Rose is in a parallel world. What I do love about that line, apart from it obviously being a callback to Season 1, or Series 1 I should say, is just the fact, in a line, it summarises how wacky and balmy Doctor Who can be. Like, yeah, that sounds ridiculous when you say it, but Doctor Who's always been kind of ridiculous and out there, and it just surmises that, and I think also reinforces that we shouldn't take this too seriously. Serious enough that, we enjoy it, we buy into the world, we buy into the characters, but not to a point where we have to scrutinise every tiny little detail, which, we've all done it, we all like to do. The Jack and Yaz scene was one of the highlights for me, and it made you click. I realised when they started having their conversation that Jack and Yaz have both been in a very similar situation, in that they've both been separated from the Doctor and had to wait for a very long time. It's not a situation that many companions have been in necessarily in the show's near 60-year history, and just to hear them talk it out I thought was very heartfelt and very emotional, because you got the weight of how Yaz was feeling, but then how it's sort of soothed by Jack, who's been there and done it, and just encouraging her to enjoy the ride whilst it lasts. So it was a really strong scene for me, and John Barrowman, Mandip Gill, brilliant. Then when they get to the plant in Osaka, the point I'd written down was it would have been really cool to see a Yaz controlled by a Dalek. In the initial trailer we saw the shot of the Dalek jumping down onto Yaz's back, and I think a lot of us assumed we'd be getting some like puppetry action like they did in Resolution, and when that scene happened, I think it would have been really cool. It gets blasted off pretty quick. It is on Yaz for quite a time. She just sort of stands there. The Dalek doesn't try and wrench her out of the way of the blast, and I mean, you could put that down to a few reasons. It was a Dalek that had just come out of the tank. It was maybe in a sense waking up, getting used to its surroundings, but I think a Yaz controlled by a Dalek would have been a really great opportunity to not only come face to face with Jack, but more importantly, the Doctor. Another great scene, there was a lot of good two-hander scenes in this, I thought, was Ryan and Jodie, I should say, and the Doctor in the TARDIS, because it's obviously setting the scenes for Ryan's departure. I think it's only undercut, in my opinion, somewhat because we knew Ryan and Graham were leaving, so of course any overt scenes building up to that we were going to see, but also that scene is essential. I don't think you could just have Ryan go at the end with one line and see you later. I think it was good he had that chat with the Doctor, so the Doctor can be honest with him rather than skirt questions like she has done for so much of their time together, but also for Ryan to establish, or hint at least, that maybe the life of travelling in time for space isn't going to be his much longer. And again, Tosin Cole and Jodie Whittaker act their socks off in the best way, and there were so many gut-punching scenes, some of the best scenes in Jodie's entire era. There's a constant sticking point as well of the Doctor saying she's still not quite sure who she is relating to the Timeless Children. And I'll mention it now, we didn't see Jo Martin pop up as the fugitive Doctor. We got a reference to the Master and the events that went on, but we didn't really get any further explanation. And I think I like the fact she still doubts it, because, in the Timeless Children, she sees the fugitive Doctor and sort of says, yeah, I know who I am. But I kind of like that self-doubt. I mean, anyone who's ever had anxiety issues or things like that, you'll know that self-doubt can be a crippling factor that doesn't just go away like that. It can persist, it can stay, and I think it's important that we show that in characters who we look up to, such as the Doctor. Even though she's an alien, it's not a bad thing or it's not shameful to introduce issues like anxiety or self-doubt. I think Jodie played it really well, and if they're going to continue it in the next season, I'm sure she'll continue to do well with it there. They're not written down here, and pardon the language, but Daleks are a fucking threat. What I mean by that is as soon as they activate and start killing, it's very much like what happened in Resolution. They get going. They do not show mercy. They do not deviate. They go around and kill everybody, regardless of gender, of age, color, creed, whatever. They are killing machines, and they are there to exterminate all of humanity. And that whole sequence was brilliant. There were times, I think, when the audio was mixed where I could hear sound effects or music more than what the Daleks were saying, but really, you could probably just assume they were saying exterminate the humans or something like that. But yeah, that whole scene re-establishes how much of a threat the Daleks can be. We've got to talk about the Bronze Boys, the Death Squad Daleks. Again, we knew the Bronze Boys were coming back, partly leaked by John Barrowman or other people, but just, that design holds up so well. It's been over 15 years now since that design, and the fact it still looks this good in 2021 is a testament to its modern design. I like it. We're touching again on this idea of purity, going back to the Daleks' origins of, being pure, that sort of call to Nazi ideology about being pure, wiping out all who are inferior, because you could argue at its core that's what a Dalek is. And the fact they make that effort once the Doctor gets the signal to go to Earth just to wipe out the inferior creatures, I think it really plays well without screaming, we're Nazis, but sort of harking back to that ideology. It obviously reminds people, too, of Victory of the Daleks, where when the new paradigm came in, they said, you are unclean or you're impure or whatever it was that they said, and they got rid of them. And that's very much how the Daleks are. Daleks will not automatically side with all Daleks. If you're not pure to them, you're gone. There were some really great action scenes. I loved them landing on Earth. The confrontation they had on the bridge with the new Daleks, I'll say, that was all expertly done, and their confrontation with Jack Robertson as well. So one note I wanted to touch on was when the Doctor says, Jack's going to go to the Dalek ship to blow it up, and Ryan says, right, we're going, him and Graham, and Jack says, you okay with that? And the Doctor says, well, I couldn't stop him if I wanted to. Jodie did a thing where she clearly thought about that choice, she thought about the implications of that before letting them go. But I think, in hindsight, the Doctor's had friends lost to Daleks or hurt because of the Daleks, so to just send her two companions off, as capable as they are, I think she could have just let Jack do it on his own. The stop talking weird Graham when they're on the ship and Bradley Walsh, bless his heart, is trying to be like, yeah, we took on the cyber dudes and now fist bump. It's not the actor's fault, but that whole scene didn't really amount to anything in my opinion. It's ground we've tread before, Ryan sort of being cringed out by what his granddad is saying. Like, we've done that now, we don't need to do it again. It was just a bit of a pointless interlude. The last survivor, meaning the reconnaissance Dalek, who, of course, comes to the Death Squad ship somehow. I can't exactly remember how he did it, if he transported on or whatever. I do like the fact he's sort of making that pitch, the whole adapt to survive, but the Death Squad Daleks just don't understand it. It very much is similar to in Series 3 with Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks. How the Dalek set hybrid adapted to survive, but the remaining Daleks didn't find that pure, so they got rid of him. Again, you could say it's ground treaded before, but I think it just reaffirms what the Daleks stand for in that sense. If you aren't like them, if you aren't pure 100%, you're gone. The Daleks attacking the TARDIS, or the spare TARDIS, was really weird. Just seeing all those Daleks zoom inside. It was a really cool effect. It was really well done, but I never thought I'd see the day. And the void effect was pretty cool as well when the Doctor scrapped the spare TARDIS. Great way to get rid of it, by the way. But just sort of being crunched up into a ball, I thought it was a pretty neat effect. You could argue, yes, did the Death Squad Daleks get wiped out too quickly? And you could argue that, yeah, but I'd argue they weren't the primary threat. The primary threat was the new Daleks, really, so I didn't sort of mind the very quick exit for them. And when Jack left, we got a Gwen Cooper reference. I know a lot of people were hoping she'd appear. Big thoughts, I hoped for it too, but we got a Gwen Cooper reference and the Doctor giving her love, she hasn't forgotten about Gwen, so nice little Torchwood reference there, and Jack's going to stay on Earth and catch up with her, so Torchwood Series 5, maybe? And then coming to the end, the companions leave because they want to. Yes, this is what I hoped for, really, in the exit. I know a lot of people were speculating that one or both of them would be killed off or whatever, but if you think about it, for the last few companions, they've either been killed, had their memories wiped, had some horrible fate, which means they can't see or interact with the Doctor again. The last companion to memory who served for a series or whatever, who left because they wanted to was Martha Jones, and that was, at this point, nearly 14 years ago. So I'm really glad it was just handled as almost like the classic series. They left because they wanted to. Bradley Walsh, Tosin Cole, great exit scenes in the TARDIS. It's all four of them, really. It was a really nice way just talking it out, and we need those scenes, I think, just, a few minutes in the TARDIS just to talk it out. I know we all want action, but talking's good too. And I must say, when they all huddled together and the Doctor said, "Bye, fam." Say what you will about the fam usage, but that hit me, man. That hit me. And I suppose the last little bit we got is that Ryan's story was finally closed with him on the bike. He's working at it. I must admit, for the final shot, panning out to those fields and having him fall over again, I get it. I think just the way it was framed and with the music, it made me chuckle a little bit, but not in a horrible way. I just think it was a bit awkwardly framed or placed with the music. But I really love the message. He didn't just conquer the bike straight away. It's always a work in progress. Nice to see Grace pop up as well. And then there was this whole thing at the end, and they're saying, "Oh, there's an announcement at 8 p.m." And if that was for after it happening, then that seemed to be that in Series 13 we're going to be getting John Bishop appearing, because obviously they've done some filming where it's set in Liverpool, and you saw John Bishop turn around at the end. And I'm not sure whether he's going to become a full companion. It didn't specify that, but we're definitely getting him for an episode, and I'd be interested to see him aboard the TARDIS, to be honest. And that, in summary, are my thoughts and review of Revolution of the Daleks. To sum it up in a few sentences, it was a cracking New Year special, full of action, full of heart, a great return for Captain Jack, and a nice, very regular exit, but I mean that in the best way, for Ryan and Graham. It was a great exit. Yes, it has its flaws. I mentioned some in there. There were moments, if I was in charge, I would have done differently, or as an actor, I would have done differently. But at the end, these guys acted brilliantly. The performances were brilliant. The side characters were brilliant. All the little moments in it as well. I just think after the year we've all had, this couldn't have aired at a better time. Yes, I know they didn't plan for COVID, like they filmed it before COVID and all that, but it was just exactly, I think, what the nation needed to kick off 2021. But if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it. And also in the comments, let me know, what did you think of Revolution of the Daleks? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? What sort of things would you do differently? Because, of course, everything I've said here is just my opinion. I'm not saying you have to agree with me. It's just what I think. But I'd love to know what you think. Let me know in those comments. And if you want to help support the channel, please consider pledging to my Patreon. It's from as little as £1 a month, and you get lots of good extras. Thank you very much for watching, and until the next Doctor Who video, I will see you all next time.